Hey guys, we're going to get started today on talking about inequalities, and some of this will be review, but some of it will be a little bit new. So be sure you have your color pencils and your markers and so forth so that you can take some good notes. So here we go. First off, the inequality symbols that we're going to talk about is your greater than, your less than, greater than or equal to, or less than or equal to. And then there's also the not equal to on that. Let's talk about how you read these inequalities. Again, if you saw it in a problem, that would read x is greater than 3. X is less than negative 2. X is greater than or equal to, not both, or one or the other. Hopefully that makes sense, because you cannot be greater than and equal to at the same time. Then you have x is less than or equal to 2. And the other one is that if your variable is switched around, in this case you would read it 3 is less than x. I prefer, if it's written this way, to go ahead and read from the variable. And so we would read it as x is greater than 3. And I think for most people that makes more sense than 3 is less than x. But you can read it either way. Okay, let's talk about graphing of inequalities on the number line. So we have x is greater than 3, x is less than a negative 2, x is greater than or equal to negative 1, x is less than or equal to 2. And those are going to be the ones that we're going to graph. So we're going to have a number line, and if you will remember that if you have a greater than, then it is an open circle, and we're talking everything greater than 3, so we're talking about going to the right. Our next one that we're going to have is less than negative 2. Again, less than is the open circle. And it is less than a negative 2, meaning that it's going to the left, because all less thans will go left, all greater thans will go right. And then we have greater than or equal to, and the difference there is that you have the closed or solid dot at a negative 1, and again it is greater than or equal to. So greater than would mean going to the right. Our next one is x is less than or equal to 2. So again, the equal to part makes it a solid dot on 2. And less than goes to the left. Again, we're talking about how to read the last one. First off, it is just a less than, so we would do an open circle. But now again, remember, you can read it as 3 is less than x. So in other words, this is going to be the smallest that you have, or as I said, I like to read it as x is greater than 3, and so in fact it's going to go to the right. Okay, so if you need to pause this video and jot this down before we go on, I would strongly suggest that you do that. Okay, so I'm going to go on, and we're going to talk about some new ways of writing our inequality. And what we're going to talk about is what is called interval notation. And so this is going to be the new part to what we're learning today. And generally in our Algebra 2, college algebra, and so forth, we use the interval notation all the time. So we begin using it now so that you're familiar with it. So again, our graphing notation, remember we use the open circle to mean just less than, but in interval notation, the way we're going to write it here is you're going to use parentheses for just the less than, and we're always going to put the left endpoint first, right endpoint second. Okay, and I'm going to give you examples of this later, so and then you can pause and also take this notes down. Our closed circle, we're now going to use brackets. Okay. Then the other thing that's going to be new is when we go on to the right and continue in that direction, we're actually saying that we're going to infinity. So we call it a positive infinity. And we always use the parenthesis at the end of it. So therefore, when we're going to the left, we say we're going to a negative infinity. And again, infinities always use the parenthesis. So again, take a minute, pause, and be sure you have this recorded. And then we're going to go through and do some examples. Okay, so this is back to the graph that you had before. So if you want to go back to that, and we're going to actually now put interval notation on it. So here's what we're going to do. Always going to look at the left endpoint and then the right endpoint. Left and right. So in this case, my left endpoint is going to be at 3. It's open. Therefore, that means it's a parenthesis at 3. And then it's going on to a positive infinity. Therefore, we're going to positive infinity, and we're going to use that as our symbol. So 3, open circle, so we use a parenthesis, and it goes on to positive infinity. This is how we write our interval notation. So this one, our left endpoint is going to be negative infinity. Our right endpoint is at a negative 2. So that's how we're going to write it. Left endpoint is at a negative infinity. Right endpoint is at a negative 2. Open circle, so therefore we're going to do a parenthesis. Okay. Now, the difference between the third one here and the first one, one is now the left endpoint is a closed circle. Therefore, that's when we're going to use our bracket. It's still going in the right to positive infinity. So there is how we're going to write it. Negative 1, bracket, meaning that it is a closed circle, to a positive infinity. Okay, so the next one that you're going to see, again, closed, but this time it's going to a negative infinity. So my left is at a negative infinity. My right is at 2, and it's a bracket because it is closed. So let me get my picture here out of the way. So that's what we're looking at, a negative infinity to 2. And then our final one here, it's going to be at 3, and it is open, so parenthesis, and it's going on to a positive infinity. So there's what we have it looking like. Starts at 3, parenthesis, because it's open circle, and then to positive infinity. So interval notation is actually pretty easy to work with. If you can just remember, the open circle now becomes a parenthesis, the closed circle becomes a bracket, and we're now going to use a negative or a positive infinity. Again, the key is it's always left endpoint is on the left, right endpoint is on the right. So again, I would pause, record this out beside your other that you had already recorded, and then we're going to go on and do some more. Okay, so this time it's going to be your turn. You're going to get to practice some. I know you're all excited. So the part that I'm going to have you practice is your interval notation, because I think you can handle the inequality part of it without any trouble. So I want you to take a minute and do the interval notation. Be sure you've hit pause and have completed that before you continue on. Okay, so let's go ahead and see. So we're going to have open circle. Therefore, we're going to have a parenthesis. To the right is a positive infinity. Okay, so did you record parenthesis 5 to positive infinity? Now here we're going to a negative infinity is our left. Negative 4 open is on our right, so parenthesis there. So parenthesis, negative infinity, -4, parenthesis. Okay, this one on the left is a closed circle, therefore we're going to have a bracket and then going to positive infinity. So a bracket on 2 going to positive infinity. This one on the left is going to a negative infinity, but it is a closed circle on a -1, so a bracket there. There's what it's going to look like. And our final one again, you're going to have on the left an open circle, so a parenthesis at 0 going to positive infinity. And there's our answer. So the question was how well did you do on those? Do you think you can figure out how to do them with a little bit more practice? So we'll be talking about these in class and doing some of these, so good luck.